5 stock plugins that make any lead sound better. Make sure to watch till number 5 because that is my favorite one. Starting off at number 1 is the Haas effect. The Haas effect is a psychoacoustic effect, which essentially means it's just tricking your brain. It makes sounds feel much wider by taking the signal, duplicating it, and placing it from left to right or from right to left in a small amount of time. Anything below 7 milliseconds, we don't hear so much. And once we start getting closer to 40, it starts to take away the illusion of one sound, and you'll start to be able to hear that skip or delay between the two signals from left to right. So to make the Haas effect, I'm going to grab a delay plugin and throw that on one of my leads here. Turn the dry wet to 100% and the feedback down to 0%. Change the sync and turn off this chain. This is going to allow the times to be changed differently in the delay. This will be very obvious if you're wearing headphones, but you'll be able to hear this as long as you're using multiple speakers that are panning both left and right. Trying this on the lead now, I can start to push this up until it sounds nice and wide, but it's not sounding like it's duplicating the signal too much. And before and after. You can always dial back the dry wet or use the filtering to only focus on certain areas that you'd like to duplicate the signal, keeping in mind that with 100% dry wet while you filter, it's going to only have the filtered sound come out. You'll want to reduce the dry wet. Now that we've created the Haas effect, make sure to rename this and click save so you can have your own Haas effect that you can just drag and drop into any of your channels much faster than recreating it every time. Make sure that if you are using the Haas effect that you are checking your mix in mono, because if you do use the Haas effect, sometimes it can cause phase cancellation issues. It'll sound like it's kind of phased out, or it'll sound quieter when you put the mix in mono. Number 2 is going to be Erosion. So Erosion is a cool plugin that you can use to kind of downgrade the quality in a tasteful way. So I'll grab the Erosion plugin, I'm gonna throw that on this sine pluck lead, and let's take a listen to what the Erosion can do. The Erosion adds this little bit of digital saturated sound that can help it punch through the mix just a little bit, and it sounds pretty cool. Listen to how much this Erosion helps this lead sine pluck really punch through the mix. There's also the noise and the wide noise settings, which adds a bit of white noise as well. Whereas the sine just adds a little bit of crispy digital bit crushing sound. Erosion can sound like it's reducing the quality, but if you do it in a tasteful way, it can really help emphasize the sound. Number 3 is going to be drum bus. Yeah, I know, drum bus, made for drums, works awesome on a lot of stuff. Let's check out this lead again and grab a drum bus. I'm gonna throw that onto the channel, and right away you're gonna notice that it does sound pretty loud. I do cover drum bus in another video, which you can check up in the corner here. But essentially, it's an all-in-one saturation, compression, enhancement tool. So just by pushing up the drive, the crunch, and affecting the transients, you can get some pretty cool sounds and drive your sound a little bit harder to make it feel louder and more full. You can play with the transients to make them sound less or more gated as well. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get more videos like this one. Number 4 is going to be chorus effect. Essentially what the chorus effect does is it duplicates the signal and it makes it feel very wide and kind of moving back and forth, changes the pitch a little bit, just makes you feel like you're kind of playing two of the same instrument just a little bit differently, which makes it feel pretty interesting. Before we jump into that, look how cool this thing is. It's a trampoline floor. I literally had to record this here just to show you how cool this floor is. Let's add a chorus onto the lead here. We'll add this onto the sine pluck. Let's take a listen to how the chorus sounds with 100% dry wet. So we're getting no dry signal, only the chorus effect signal. You can hear that it's adding a bit of detune, it's changing the pitch a little bit. It sounds a little bit more interesting, but dialing too much of this does make it sound like it's a little bit out of tune, especially if you really push up these parameters. Sounds more like a fun house than anything. So bringing these back down, I can introduce just about 40 or 50% dry wet, maybe a little bit more amount. And we can listen before and after. It's just adding a little bit of movement and width to the sound, making it feel just a little bit more interesting without totally changing the idea of the sound. Let me just turn the feedback up so we get a little bit more of the chorus effect as well. Then let's listen in the context of the mix. Number 5, my favorite is Wanderer. So Wanderer is Wanderer is a filter delay plugin that uses multiple bands to control different parameters of delay. Wanderer is actually just a preset of the filter delay, but it is a great preset that you can just throw on to pretty much any lead sound, and immediately, just with those settings, it's going to sound awesome. If I throw this on my sine pluck, see how it sounds right away. Right away, it sounds really cool. I've turned off my delay and reverb so you can hear just what the Wanderer is doing. So it does have a dry signal input as well, and that is great for actually introducing the original sound because it is making the sound so wet sounding with all the delays and panning. You want to introduce your dry back in so that you get the original raw signal as well. Better yet than actually adding the dry is to add a second pane or a return track where you're only using the Wanderer. Let's try that on this lead here. What I'll do is drop that onto the lead here, press Ctrl G to create a group, and then I'll duplicate the chain here, and we'll call this one dry and this one wet. In the dry chain, I'll actually delete the Wanderer, and in the wet chain, we will have the Wanderer. So now I have this totally wet, turn the volume down a little bit so we're not clipping, and this totally dry. Keep in mind that it will be a little bit louder, so I'm just going to reduce both these volumes by about 3 decibels. So now we have a dry, we have a wet. You can also use return tracks for this or duplicate and use 2 channels, but this way keeps it nice and clean and within the 1 channel strip. With the Wanderer, it just fills up the space quite a bit more. It feels more atmospheric, but you still retain the original quality of the original dry sound. So you get the power, but you also get that atmospheric width and space. It just sounds less dry and more exciting and more professional. If you learned something from this video, check out one of these 2 videos right here where you'll learn more about mixing. Don't forget to subscribe and download the project files in the description below.